I'm in the process of making a video on Delta Force and all of the information that I have and all of the proof that I have that explains why I believe Delta Force doesn't have skill-based matchmaking in its regular modes. Um, this video today is going to cover that not at all. It will barely even touch on the subject, but just understand that a key point in why I personally believe Delta Force doesn't have skill-based matchmaking comes from a lot of the information that I'm going to share here today. And at the same time that I'm doing this, I want you to consider why you never see any big-name streamers share this information. Because there's a lot of reasons they're not going to want you to see this, and a lot of the information I'm going to share here today goes directly in the face of a lot of things that people will claim about games like Delta Force and the people that play it. I.e., what does skill in Delta Force actually mean? Well, you can quantify skill, actually, in a lot of regards. And right here we see one of the first steps to figuring that out, which is going to be the Details tab of your profile, where you get a brief overview of your information for the Warfare and Operations mode. Mainly, I like to play Warfare, just to enjoy Operations a little bit more, but these days I primarily play Warfare. I just find it a little more fun, and I'm kind of sick of Call of Duty these days. The point here being, we can see a lot of information right off the bat. One of the first things you'll notice is that there is no KD ratio anywhere for you to see. There's a kills per minute, there's your score per minute, there's your win-loss, and that's about it. So, let's go through the stats that we see here. One of the first things that we see is we have the number of battles and the total play time so far. I have it set to overview, which is not the current season, it's all seasons combined. It's your total play time in game. I have 107 battles, which is, a decent number of them, and 39 hours is a pretty good chunk of time, especially considering I have a life outside of video games. Hard to believe. Now, the next thing we see directly next to that is your season average for a variety of different stats. Fire is basically just, do you shoot really well? Survival is, do you shoot really well and not die? Basically, is your KD relatively high or is it relatively low? Then you have co-op, which is how many things do you do that are for the benefit of the team as a whole versus just you. In other words, do you just play for kills or do you play for things like, setting up good squad beacons? Do you tend to revive players a lot? Do you do things that are not necessarily just getting kills and pumping your stats? Next, we see objective, which is, do you play the objective very well? Are you defending well? Are you attacking well? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing for the mode? And then vehicle is just, are you using vehicles often or not? These are all on a sliding scale of 1 to 100. As you can see, you're never really going to hit, 0 on this scale, pretty much ever, unless you literally never interact with vehicles in any capacity in the game. Probably not going to happen. You probably will interact with a vehicle at some point and get something in those stats. As we can see, I'm fairly all around when it comes to things other than vehicles. I'm either, rated about, average with 50s and or higher with things like co-op where I'm almost at 80, which is to say I tend to play the game in a very supportive role is how I like to say things. I try to flank the enemy, I try to get behind them, I try to play the objective a little bit more, but I can do things that are a little bit more selfish. We can break down that selfishness a little bit better and see kind of how I break down with that by going down to this bottom section and looking at the kills per minute section, where we can see that I have an average of 1 kill every single minute, which is not necessarily indicative of how I play. It's not, oh, I only killed one guy this minute and I won't get another kill for another minute. It could be 2 or 3 minutes where I'm defending a location, or I'm just not doing anything that involves me getting any kills. I could just be repositioning for a full 2 or 3 minutes where I'm not really doing anything of massive actual KD value. That said, my accuracy and my precision are very, very low at, less than 20%, so less than 1 in 5 of my shots is hitting. And that can be explained by the fact that I don't tend to engage enemies that I might necessarily be able to kill. I might be shooting shots just to keep some heads down. I might be shooting shots at enemies so distant that rarely are my bullets hitting them, and I might be able to get a kill every now and then. That is to say, you can tell that I'm taking shots I won't necessarily hit. I'm not necessarily doing the best job of getting kills, but I am doing fairly decently. We also see in the score per minute that my win ratio is less than half the time. My captures, though, says that I've captured 178 objectives, which is basically that objective stat. Am I playing the objective? In 107 battles, I'm capturing an objective at least once every single game, if not multiple times. So I tend to play the objective, basically. Now, all that to say, these are your baseline things that you're seeing. Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? How far in that little kind of spider graph are you towards the top? Are you towards the bottom? Or are you towards the middle? And as we can see, I'm definitely not towards the bottom. I'm average at around basically everything outside of co-op, where I tend to be a little more co-op focused and helping the team more than I am selfish and playing for myself. Now, the second thing we have to go to inspect to kind of see how things work is we have to go to your history tab. You'll notice that I tabbed over and went all the way to the bottom. Today we're going to finish out this video by going pretty much a handful of times through these and looking at my stats and my position on the leaderboard. The latest one we have, going back to the 7th of February. Now, we can see that my score was 23,000, had 44 kills, and then we see a handful of little badges here. These are your medals that you earn in match, and each one of them has a specific thing associated with it. From left to right, we see Sentinel earned 30,000 score, or I'm sorry, earned 3,000 score, defending objectives by yourself. Basically, are you personally on the objective, and are you doing it heavily? Are you very much focusing on the objective? Which is to say, that match I did. Then we have respawn support, which is basically, are you supporting your team getting to the front lines quickly? Yes. SMG Master, get at least 8 kill in operations or 12 kills in warfare with a, why does it say with an AR, but it's SMG Mastery? Interesting. Anyways, that one's supposed to be saying with a, SMG, but it just doesn't for some reason. So we can tell that I used an SMG a majority of that match. Avenger, get 1 revenge kill it, an enemy that killed a teammate recently, and then Great Wingman, provide more than 20 assists. Now we can go into this match, see how I stacked up. You can see that in comparison to 2 of my teammates, very well. We can go to the scoreboard. There I am, right up near the top. Exactly where you expect somebody like me, who performs relatively well at this game, to be. You're going to see one of the things that I mention in my kind of statements about this game. If there's skill-based matchmaking, you shouldn't be consistently in one spot. The skill-based matchmaking should be trying to place you, yes, around your skill level, but it should be giving you harder matches and easier matches and fluctuating around a little bit. You should not be near the top all the time. Anyways, continuing on, we saw the next match I played not too long later. 14,000 score, 19 kills. We see once again Sentinel, Respawn, SMG Master, Avenger, Great Wingman. A common trend that you will see with people who are playing support, a thing to look out for somebody, if you are trying to be well-rounded, decent number of kills, decently high score, defending objectives, respawning your teammates, and getting a lot of assists. Now with support classes, that's pretty easy. You throw out your flash drone, you flash everybody in an area, you make it easier for your team to push in on enemies that are having a much more difficult time shooting back, and you get those positions captured. Now let's go check it out. Well, my team performed well on average this game. Scoreboard, not necessarily as high as I normally am, right? But 19 kills, 35 deaths, 56 assists. That's pretty good. Let's go to this next match here. Just go to the scoreboard. Near the top of the leaderboard, 30, 42, 71. Now for that game, we had one less thing. Wasn't a big Sentinel guy, but I had AR Master and SMG Master. At the time, I was trying to get badges in both. And I did. 30 kills, 17,000 score. Next matchup, we see Sentinel, we see Respawn, we see that nice spread, like I said, where you can tell supportive player primarily. 23,030, whole team was pretty high. We go to defeat, let's see what happened. Pretty good, pretty good. Up near the top. Well, let's go back again. Let's go to the next one up, which I think is this one. We see Prowler, got over 50 kills. Respawn was helping my team a lot. Flying bullets killed a lot of people from far away. We had AR, SMG, Avenger, and Great Wingman. One of my best matches so far. 132 additional merit. 76 kills. Let's see where we stacked up. Very high, with my teammate being higher than me with 109. Very solid match. Where was I? Top of the leaderboard. Consistent, consistent, consistent. Here we see 25,000 score, 57 kills, Prowler, Respawn, AR, SMG, Avenger, Great Wingman. Once again, more of a supportive role. You can see it from the stats. The stats don't lie. 30-minute match. Sure, I wasn't really saving people, but oh man, was my teammate doing a lot of saving while I was doing a lot of redeploying. We look where I'm at. Very, very high on the leaderboard. Now, continuing on, we see 13,000, 19 kills, Respawn, SMG, Avenger, Wingman. Once again, if we go in, we see how my team was doing, or my squad rather. Up at the top, the top 10 is pretty solid. Pretty solid for a 30-plus man team. Being in the top 10 is pretty good. You're in the top third of the team. We keep going. We see these things consistently. Within, relatively the top third of the players, we see, once again, Sentinels, Respawns, we see consistently doing the things that pin me as near the top of the leaderboard. We can click on any of these. You're going to see me. If I'm very low, one of the things you'll notice, very low match duration. I came into a match that was already near its end. That tends to happen a lot. Like this one, 9 minutes into a match that had already been going, I was in there for half the time. Why did I give up? Oh, right. I remember this one. This was on the 12th of February. I had an appointment I had to get to later. But, besides the point. If we keep looking, one of the things you'll see that I mention is you'll consistently see that high up on the leaderboard. So when people question, oh, you're not very good at this game, you use a specific scope, and that's the only reason, it's a low tier player's scope, yada yada yada. Well, I'm scrolling through here, and I'm usually in the top 25 to 30% of the team, if not in the top 5 players, if not at the top. So, what's the deal? What actually constitutes skill, and what do you look out for when you see a player and you want to find out, are they good at the game? One of the first things I say is, find out who they play. You'll notice that I only ever play Hacklaw, because I like to play a supportive character. I like a very specific playstyle, and that playstyle may not necessarily look like a standard player. It's going to look a little bit more supportive. But most people who play these games don't really understand what a supportive role looks like. It's not very flashy. You might get a lot of kills in a flanking maneuver one time, but it might take you 6 or 7 deaths before you get into another good position. But you're redeploying your squad mates, and that's one of the most important things to look for if you are a supportive player. The redeploy beacon is not to be underestimated, and as you can see, pretty much every single match, I get my merit for redeploys. Lots and lots and lots of redeploys. Another thing you're going to notice is if you're looking for somebody who's particularly good, you're going to see a lot of Avenger medals, because Avenger medals indicate that you are working cooperatively with your squad or with your team. You're working nearby in conjunction with them. Additionally, Great Wingman medals indicate that you're doing a lot of things that are assisting the team as a whole, or at least you're doing them to the benefit of somebody nearby, if not just yourself. Now, another thing you can always look out for to see how you're doing if you're trying to be supportive is especially that Sentinel medal, because Sentinel medals indicate that you are playing the objective heavily. You are hard hitting on the objective, which is the main point of every single match. It's not a game like Call of Duty where the end goal is to just beat the enemy in terms of your score. It's not a KD based game. So you have to look out for that to find if somebody's good or not. And as I've said, one of the things the game doesn't explicitly track, but you can figure out yourself through this page, is what your KD is, what somebody's KD is. But KD isn't everything. And once again, when I say things like Delta Force is a game where skill is hard to pin down with a specific quantifiable measurement because it's a conjunction of other measurements that really indicate it, it's hard to say what skill means as a whole for most people. Because you can earn score by redeploying your teammates. You can earn score by getting a bunch of assists. You can earn score by doing absolutely nothing, not shooting a single enemy, but spending a lot of time on the objective. So long as you're a body on the objective, you're earning score. It's not a lot of score, but it's earning score. And the point here is, don't be somebody whose stats page here in the details for that little spider graph, don't be somebody who doesn't have a very high objective. Your objective score, every single one of your scores, ideally, outside of vehicle, if you don't really enjoy playing in vehicles, should be over 50. If you're below 50, it means that about half the time, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. If you're over 50%, that means that over half the time, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Now, that's, not exactly how that works, but it basically means if you're over 50, you're doing what you're doing what is intended for you to do. You're shooting the enemy, you're managing to kill more than you die, you're staying on the objective, and you're playing cooperatively. That's what you can look out for. And one of the things we can do is we can go into the chat here. Let's just pick the first guy we see. I get the feeling this guy's not going to have a lot of time in this game. Okay, maybe not this guy. Let's pick somebody else. Of course, the first person I picked just right off the bat. Not a good person. Let's try you. I'm going to regret this, aren't I? Yes, I am. Okay, let's try you. Come on. Give me somebody I want. Oh, gosh. This isn't going well. Of course, when I want to demonstrate my point, I'm not getting... Okay, here we go. First person we could check. Perfect. Okay. 39 hours, 112 battles. We can see that his score is not great. His score per minute's really not great. But if we go to his history tab, we'll be able to see, does he play cooperatively, right? We can see his scores are usually around 10,000. We can see, okay, he redeploys his teammates. He gets Avenger medals. He's got a lot of distance. I'd say this guy's a sniper player primarily. He's not really doing the objective as much, but he is trying to support his team by being out a little far. Like I said, Avenger, Great Wingman, Avenger, something that indicates kind of a team player. I don't necessarily like that he's not playing a supportive class. Sometimes, I mean, he mixes it up a lot, but he seems, just from his history tab, without going too deep into it, he does seem to be somewhat trying. And if we go in here and we go to overview, we'll be able to see kind of how he performs. Well, he averages a kill every 2 minutes, which isn't great, but it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Now, what we can see here is exactly what I was saying. This spider graph is an excellent indicator of a right off the bat how good somebody performs in terms of cooperative play. We can see that this guy really doesn't like to play vehicles, and as I indicated just before when seeing his history tab, he doesn't tend to play on the objective. He seems like he's a much more interested player in playing as a sniper class. Survival, meaning that when he does get kills, he's getting a lot more kills than he is deaths, but fire also indicates he's not getting a lot of kills, and he's not getting a lot of kills particularly quickly. Now we can see his co-op is at 60, which indicates he's performing more cooperatively than not. As I said, he has a lot of those Revenger medals. He got a redeploy medal at one point. He's doing some relatively good supportive work. Now, Let's try somebody else and see if we can indicate this. Okay, here we go. Perfect. A general 3. Well, here we can see, 524 battles. That's a lot of time in game. 131 hours. 4.46 million. He averages a score of 563 per minute. Let's go to his history tab. Hidden, which doesn't really help. Doesn't make my point super easy. But if we go to overview, well, one of the first things we can see is that this guy prefers to play in vehicles. Now, obviously, when you play in vehicles, you're not necessarily going to get a very high score per minute, but what you are going to do is you are going to get a lot of vehicle-related stats. I'd imagine that this guy does not have a particularly large number of matches where he was doing anything particularly noteworthy with his actual loadout, and he was doing a lot of his work in a vehicle. And we can see that this is the case with 493 kills happening in a vehicle, which is a decent chunk of kills. He's done a lot of damage, meaning that this guy seems to kind of play an anti-vehicle kind of play style. 61,000 is a lot of damage. And we can see, 356 vehicles destroyed, driving for over 20 hours. Decent chunk of time. That's a tenth of his playtime. Now, as we can see, his survival is pretty high, meaning that, on average, he's getting a lot more kills than he is deaths. His fire, not so great, likely because his kills per minute is sub 1.0, which, as we can understand, due to his vehicle play. Which, as we can see here, objective, he's playing objective hard. Which is an indicator of a good player. Somebody who's cooperating with his team to get things done. Let's see if we can find one more person. Here we go. I think I had this guy before, didn't I? Oh, no, I didn't. This is somebody else. Okay. Well, let's go all the way down to the bottom and see how he performs, right? So we can go through and we can do those objective metrics that I said. We know what to look out for. Well, he doesn't have a particularly high score, but what he does have is that he likes to play one specific character. This has me believing that this guy does have a preference for a specific kind of play style. So, as we can see, he prefers Luna. Super obvious based on the number of Luna matches, but he's not opposed to playing other characters. Now, the next thing we can see right off the bat, he's not a particularly high-scoring player, but that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. As we can see here, Sentinel, 3,000 score. Like I said, playing the objective is important. We can see that he has great Wingman and Avenger pretty consistently, with respawn support every now and then. And as we can tell from a lot of this, he does play a little bit of vehicle play, but he is doing those things that I said well-rounded players are going to have things like respawn support, relatively high scores. They're going to have things that indicate that they are playing cooperatively as their MO. And when we go into this page here, we go to overview and we see his stats, like I said, as we can expect, not a big vehicle guy. His kills per minute are, 1 every 2 minutes on average. He has very low accuracy and a very low precision, meaning he's shooting a lot, but not necessarily hitting a lot. And then we can go to his spider graph here and see exactly as I've said. He is a very cooperative player who averages more kills than he does deaths. He doesn't play the objective super hard, but he isn't not playing the objective. And he tends to play more cooperatively, meaning that he's doing respawns, he's assisting his team in other ways, other than his KD. Which, indication of a good player, are your stats of survival, co-op, and objective. Fire and vehicle are not necessarily only, selfish stats, but survival, co-op, and objective are definitely stats that indicate, are you a good player? The more white is filling your spider graph in the overview section, the more of a good player you should be expected to be. Let's find one more person here. There we go, somebody who's not super new but isn't super old. 7 hours, 22 battles. 305 score per minute. It's not great, but he's just starting out. Let's go to his history tab, and as we can see, respawn beacon, wingman, Avenger, exactly what you expect from somebody who's doing a little bit of everything. And as you can see, this person is much like me, just plays Hacklaw. Now if we go to overview, well, we can see exactly what we expect to see. Does not play vehicles. In fact, that looks like a minute at most of being in a vehicle doing anything. Fire isn't great, but as we, come to expect from a sub 1.0 KD per minute, that's not, too horrible. Survival is a little above average, co-op's a little above average, and the objective time isn't great, which means that this individual here, is tending to get more kills than they are deaths. They're not doing it super often, but they are actually trying to help their team, doing a little bit of cooperative play. Which is, of course, what we see here from the respawn beacons, the Great Wingman, and the Avenger medals. If we do one last one just to indicate what I'm talking about here, let's see. Another relatively new player, 362, 3 hours, 9 battles. Oh, that is an abysmal win-loss ratio. Geesh, poor guy. But as we see here, played medic primarily in the early times and has kind of stuck relatively to medic throughout, switching over at some points. What we see here is we don't really see a whole lot of matches, but we do see a relatively consistent trend, aside from this one. That's a really bad one where he gave up. I don't know what was going on there. But if we go into his details tab, he doesn't have enough to really show us. So that tends to be the case with newer players. They need more matches before they get this indication stuff here. 9 is just simply not enough. But we do see the startings of somebody who could eventually become a relatively well-rounded player. We are seeing the Wingman, he's providing a lot of support, Avenger, meaning he's playing near his team, and we see things like respawn support, even while playing medic, which is a little interesting. Wouldn't be my first choice as a medic to bring the respawn beacon. I would much rather bring things like a med kit so that my teammates can run past it, heal themselves, so they're not getting into bad situations constantly, but to each their own. But he is clearly playing a more supportive role, playing mainly medic and actual recon. So, one final time here, just to kind of say this and get it, repeated as often as I can. KD is not everything, especially in games like Delta Force, where there are a lot of other factors to your win-loss ratio and your overall value to a team. Just because somebody uses a thermal scope doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. It might be they're playing a certain style of gameplay and you just don't understand it. Now, if somebody has a relatively low KD, but they're near the top of the leaderboard consistently, could be that they're doing things like medicing and supporting their team. Don't always go off of score per minute as an indicator of how good somebody is, because you can earn score by doing non-combat related tasks. But the more non-combat related tasks you're doing to earn score, the better an actual teammate you are. With that said, thank you all very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in my video where I go through and explain a lot more about Delta Force and skill-based matchmaking accusations the game has had levied at it. Have a wonderful afternoon. 10211 out.